always tell people who are their foot's in the door, they're on their way, two things. One is it's not a race. I actually think I was made a showrunner too early. I had done the originals for 4 years, and then I was suddenly running Roswell. And, just because you're really good alone in a room with your dog and a computer doesn't necessarily mean that you should be in charge of $1 bajillion and 300 people's emotional and physical well-being. You learn really fast, but I think the latter is there for a reason.
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. In our latest episode, Moon Zappa speaks with We Were Liars co-developer and co-showrunner Carina Adly MacKenzie about YA storytelling through an adult lens, the alchemy of diverse writers' rooms, mentoring young writers, and much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, or Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. And now, here's Moon in conversation with Carina.
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. And I am sitting here with Carina Adly MacKenzie. The show is We Were Liars. It's streaming on Amazon. And I love the show so much, I sat through the commercials. That's how I wouldn't wait for the screeners. And it is so good. And I will give my description of it, which is that it's a young woman who visits an island, a private island owned by her very wealthy family every year, and then something happens, and we're on an amnesia adventure.
It's not an amnesia thriller. Yeah.
Okay. How on earth did you acquire this book? What was you read the book? You fought for this book? What's the backstory on this?
So I read the book in 2014, when it first came out. I was working on the originals as a staff writer, maybe a story editor, and I just loved it. I cried. I got online and tweeted at the author just to be like, I think somebody sent me my tweet recently, and I was like, I feel this in my bones. Thank you for writing this beautiful book. And then my boss, Julie Pleck, was going on vacation, and I handed it to her and was like, you have to take this book and you have to read it. And for the next few years, our adaptation is, I believe, the 7th or 8th attempt that has been made to adapt it. It was being shopped around as a movie at that time. And when they finally started looking at TV, we tried to acquire the book in, I think, 2018, Julie and I together, to make a show. We met with the author. We had a great meeting with her. And we both had deals at Warner Brothers. And Netflix snaked it from us. I say snaked it because it was we had talked about doing it with Warner Brothers for Netflix. We had all these different ideas. And Netflix had it for a really long time. And I just kind of accepted it was going to be the one that got away, which broke my heart. But when the pandemic hit and I had all this extra time on my hands, I reached out to the author and I was like, what else you got? And she was about to put out another book, so we started adapting that one together. And in one of our many Zooms chatting about that, she casually mentioned that Netflix was not moving forward with their adaptation. And I was like, I have to go. And I made some phone calls. I was like, I have to get this. We have to get it. So that's the story.
Right.
Is that it was the one that got away for a really long time, and then it returned to me.
So E. Lockhart,
Yes.
She's known for young adult books?
She started writing middle grade books, comedies, and then wrote this sort of fucked up psychological thriller. And
was it considered young adult? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what made you say, I'm not going to read an adult book, I'm going to read a young adult book?
I have always, I mean, I read everything I can get my hands on. I've always loved young adult books. I love young adult TV.
What do you love about it?
That there's something about the first times of it all and the high stakes of small things. You know, getting dumped at 16 is far more life-ending than it is at 35. And so I've always sort of gravitated toward it. This is the first actual project I've done that where I'm writing about teenagers. I started writing on the originals and on Roswell, New Mexico, which were CW shows, so people think of them as YA, but each of those shows only had one teenage character in it. So this is my first time writing about teenagers for teenagers, which has been an adventure.
That sounds like there's some information there. But I'll start with saying you had to wrangle so many characters, so many people, so many everyone at the top of their game. What was the process like in terms of putting your staff writers together and the directors were changing? Like, how did you navigate?
So the putting together a staff is such a weird and scary situation. I mean, everybody starts with reading a ton of scripts, like hundreds and hundreds of scripts. With this show in particular, there's a lot that I can relate to in this show, more than like I would really care to talk about because I don't want to get my family in trouble. But, I'm from New England. I have 3 sisters. I have 2 sisters. There's 3 of us. There's a lot that I could relate to, but there's a lot that I couldn't. The show is about a South Asian kid who's the only non-white person. He and his uncle are the only non-white people on this island of blondes. And so we knew that we needed his voice represented in the writer's room. We also knew that we didn't want to have, one Indian writer be the person stuck on the island with a bunch of white writers. So we really had to diversify the room. And that was, a lot of what we were looking for was people who could fill the gaps that I knew I had. I'm not a mother. There's a lot of motherhood story folded into this. So I knew I wanted mothers. I knew I wanted gay representation in the room. And finding the right alchemy, people who you vibe with and who you think will vibe with each other, is daunting. I've gotten it wrong in the past. I'm really proud of the room we put together. And some of it is, finding people Brett Matthews is a writer who I never actually worked with before the show, but our shows, when I was doing Roswell and he was doing Legacies, our shows shared a kitchen. And so, he was a friend. So filling it in with people who you like to be around is important. And then I'm really passionate about lower level writers and making sure that the lower level writers are getting mentorship, because I had great mentors when I was a staff writer. And so, in an era where I think a lot of rooms have fewer people but higher level people, we wanted to make sure that we had staff writers and story editors. We had a sort of a mini development room. We promoted our writer's assistant from that to staff writer by the time the show was greenlit. So just having, a good mix, a lot of voices.
Now you said you got it wrong once.
Yeah.
What does that mean? When you get something wrong versus getting something right? How do you keep the writers? How does the loyalty to the writers work? What makes you want to keep them around?
Of people, Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson, who were staff writers. They're now running Yellow Jackets. Diana Demijohn, Declan DeBarra, like these extraordinary writers. If I listed them all, they all have their own shows now. I would take a bullet for any of these people. Like I loved them so deeply. And, it was a little bit of a rude awakening when I was in my next room and I was like, oh, these are all very different people with very different opinions. And it's not always going to feel like the happiest Brady Bunch family in the world. So it's not that I feel like, oh, I drastically erred and I hired someone evil. It's more like I now know what it feels like to be in a room where people don't necessarily want to be there, or don't love the show. I think sometimes, we all need jobs. And so I can't ever fault a writer for taking a job on a show that maybe isn't their cup of tea, but you can feel it when the writer doesn't love the material. So that has become a priority. We were really lucky. We had this book series. We could tell when we sat down with writers to first interview them, did they love the book? Are they immediately sitting there and talking about what they want to change or what's wrong with it, which is part of the job of adapting, but maybe not the first thing you want to be thinking. But we lucked out with this room. I'm really proud of it. We have some, writers who this is their very first job and who just have made such an impact that I like can't wait to teach them and learn from them and watch them grow and hopefully, keep them employed. Knock on wood.
When did you know you were a writer? Did you grow up in an artistic family, all those blondes?
No, I did not grow up. I didn't grow up in a family of blondes. My mom's Egyptian. My blonde is fake. I grew up in a very multicultural family. My family, everyone's in business. I think, when I was in my room writing poetry, my parents were worried about me. They were like, is she okay? I know for sure, I would watch Dawson's Creek episodes over and over and over again. And my mom was like, what's wrong with her? Something has to be wrong with her. Like, this is weird. She's already seen this episode. What is she doing? And I was like, I'm studying. So no, my family's not artistic. I was definitely the odd one out. But yeah, I've always wanted to be a writer. The only time that I ever wanted to be anything other than a writer was when I wanted to be a pop star, and that was brief. Might circle back to it. You never know.
And you also did some journalism, and you also wrote a young adult book as well.
I was a journalist and a TV critic, which I've loved. I was doing that. I did that for about 5 years, and so now I am burdened with really giving a fuck what critics think. Other writers will be like, who cares about the critics? And I'm like, me, I care about them, and I'm going to read these things until I fall asleep at night and then I'm going to have nightmares about them. And that started with, honestly, like I wasn't, I had all the assistant jobs that anybody has when they move out to LA, and I was terrible at them, and I was miserable. And my roommate, Amy Kaufman, who, has now become a very well-respected, or was always a well-respected journalist, but, we were 22 then. She was writing for the LA Times, and they needed somebody to recap episodes of The Vampire Diaries for their blog. And she said, they'll pay you $100 a week. And I was like, great, I definitely need $100 a week. So I started with one show, recapping it for the LA Times blog. And within a few weeks, they had given me 10 shows. So I had 2 shows a night and was writing recaps of them. Kevin Williamson and Julie Plec, who were the showrunners of The Vampire Diaries, noticed my reviews and reached out to me on Twitter. And I was, like I said, somebody who had watched Dawson's Creek over and over and over again. So Kevin Williamson tweeting me, this was 2009, so like Twitter didn't have verified marks or anything. And like, I didn't know if it was really him. I thought like maybe one of my friends was making fun of me. They reached out to me, and then that sort of transitioned me into journalism and interviewing them. They wanted to talk to me, and I got to do interviews. I got really, welcomed by Julie and Kevin. And eventually they took me out to dinner. They wanted to meet this person that was writing a review of their show every single week. And I kind of told them my life story. And at the end of the dinner, Julie said, you're in the wrong business. You should be a writer. You're a storyteller. And I was like, but I like my business. I had always wanted to be a writer. I think, in college I wanted to be a poet, and then I learned what money was. But when I drove out, I went to University of Colorado. When I drove out to LA after I graduated, my goal was to be a music supervisor. And that was because in my head, I was like, it'll be easier to be a music supervisor than a TV writer. And I quickly learned that like for every 10, 20 TV writers, there's one music supervisor. It's a really hard job to get, but I still never thought I would be in this position. I never thought I was gonna, get to write the shows I loved, but I did, and that's largely because of Julie Plec and Kevin Williamson and Greg Berlanti, people who were my heroes when I was literally like 11, 12 years old, who I just met through being a journalist, and who, I don't know, by some like lightning strike of luck, liked me and decided to nurture me. And that's pretty much the story.
That's incredible. That's so interesting. The show really makes me want to read the book and to really understand the adaptation and how how close to the book did you get? Was the three adjective descriptions of people, is that from the book? Is that you? That technique of like helping you get to know the characters very quickly?
The technique
narration?
is from the book.
Okay.
The words are new for the show. So in the book, it's very much first person. It's very much from the perspective of one girl with amnesia. So her brain is kind of broken. She speaks in metaphor. Tells a lot of fairy tale stories, but like kind of casts her family in these roles. It's deep in her psychology. So if she's not in a scene, you're not seeing the scene. And so the biggest thing that we had to do was give ourselves the permission to step outside of her broken brain and tell the rest of the characters' stories. One of the things that really gave us that permission is that there is a prequel that's about the three sisters when they were teenagers. So even though we didn't tell that story in the first season of our show, we had a greater understanding of who these women were. In the book, they're sort of these villains. They're always together, the three of them. You never really distinguish each sister from each other. And so we went in and gave them their own, struggles. Johnny and Mirren, who are her two cousins that are sort of in her age and in her group of friends, they got their own backstories. Mirren did not have a real love interest in the book. Johnny did not have a trauma that he was dealing with. So we got to add a lot. Mm-hmm. We also lost a lot. And it was, as Julie and I have been doing interviews with the author, Emily Lockhart, we've talked a lot about how I was sort of clinging white-knuckled to the book. I really loved this book. I really wanted to honor it. I really didn't want to piss off book talk. And so there were a lot of things that, a lot of darlings that had to be killed that I was the one, crying over the death. There's a lot on the cutting room floor. But we also got to really grow the story, which I think was key. And I think that's what – I think that a lot of times, I love reading. I watch adaptations with a critical eye to say, what did they cut and what should I be mad at? But if you're a fan of this book, you get to watch the show and gain more insight into other characters. And if you watch the show first, you get to then go to the book and get deep inside the, broken mind of the lead character. So I think they complement each other in a really interesting way. People keep saying, should I read it first or watch it first? And I'm like, well, watch it first so you don't get spoiled on the internet now. But the read is still valuable before or after, which is a cool.
Yeah, like I said, it's inspired me to go back and read it because it's so well done. I was talking to a friend of mine, and we're both in our 50s, and she had seen it. She didn't know I was going to do the interview with you, and I was like, what, you've seen this? She's like, yes, it's so good. And so after when I had seen it, we were talking about how you probably should have group therapy right after.
Yeah.
Because it just that psychological there's so many things to that you address. I mean,
there are a lot of people, not just teenagers, in my Instagram DMs right now demanding I pay for their therapy.
Exactly.
And I think they should all look into what writers are being paid these days because I can barely pay for my own therapy. Thank you so much.
But, I mean, you've tackled morality, ethics, family that's dysfunctional. There's guilt, how healing, how that process can be so slow. Ignorance, greed, colonialism. I mean, you've like class, legacy. There's so many things to just grab onto and take a look at. And psychologically, I think every human, if they're making weird choices, it's completely based on their history. So I love your take on young adult as being the first and how vivid those experiences are and how they inform later and later decisions. So for you, like, what was the North Star? What were the themes that really you're like, this has to be made because?
It's interesting because it tackles all of those things. There's racism themes in the book, but it's not like it ends in a like neat little lesson of here's how to deal with it. it ends messy. And I think that one of the things that appealed is, as a white woman, you know, when you sort of have a reckoning, you want to be a good person, you want to contribute to progress in the world, you want to use your privilege for good, to be like incredibly cringy about it. And the more you try to do that, the more you step on in mines. And you just have to sort of be ready to be like, oh, I stepped on a mine. I'm sorry. I'm going to do better. I'm going to try again. And this story allowed us to do that in this sort of messy way. We're telling a story about a 16-year-old girl who is awakening to her own privilege and to the pain that, she has inadvertently caused a person that she loves. And it's not like she can go read a book and figure out how to fix it. She has, just because she's aware of her own privilege doesn't mean it goes away. She can't erase it. And in her efforts to solve things, the deep-seated nature of what that privilege does to you rears its ugly head. So I think that's what appealed. The challenge of tackling something kind of scary appealed. I think also only in recent years, I think thanks to shows like 13 Reasons Why or Euphoria, even Normal People is YA. I think those shows have turned the corner of what is YA storytelling, as far as no, it doesn't have to teach you a nice little lesson at the end. Teenagers are humans. They're a lot smarter than we think they are. And so having sort of the permission to be kind of fucked up, to tell these stories from an adult lens, really appealed to me.
Yeah, and their actions are equally as the adults. They're equally as terrible as the adults that are in the story. And what was the character that you most related to, and what was the one that was the most difficult to write? Who are the villains to you? Are there any?
Yes, the villains to me are the parents and the grandfather and the grandmother. I'm trying to say this in a way that maybe isn't deeply spoilery, but I feel like if anybody's gotten this far in the podcast, they've probably paused it and gone to watch it. The greatest failing in the show, I think, are the mothers who know that there is wrong being done, who know that their kids are suffering from this wrong, and they decide to do nothing about it because they're more worried about their inheritance. And they're just kind of like, can you just be quiet about this problem for a little while? Because I'm trying to get written into the will. And I think the lesson there is that if we see a wrong and we decide to let it become the next generation's problem, that wrong is going to grow and it will cost everybody. And so that was an interesting story to dance around.
I'm tearing up.
It was a scary thing to dance around in a writer's room. We have a lot of young writers. They are they're not far from the age of these characters, and so looking at what the generation before me has done, looking at what my generation has done, looking at what we were expecting of their generation was sort of a little bit of a come to Jesus experience.
When you started the process, did you have a different idea than the outcome? Did you grow? In what way did you grow?
Yeah, I'll tell this story. So there is an opening scene of the book that I was like, this is the best opening scene. It's going to kill, it's going to lock everybody into this show. I can't wait to do it. It is on the cutting room floor. And I can't believe I eventually let this go. I'll tell it. The story begins with the lead character saying, it all started when, I was at home getting ready to pack up to go to Beachwood Island for the summer like we always do. And I went outside and I saw my dad was loading his suitcase into a car, and I said, "Dad, what are you doing? Where are you going?" And he turned around and shot me in the heart, and my heart rolled out of my chest across the driveway, blood splattering and everywhere. And my mom stepped over my body and said, "God, Cadence, can't you just be normal?" And this is how she tells the audience, my parents are getting divorced. My dad told me that he's leaving my family. She never says that. She just tells this dramatic story, and it's that first sort of here's an unreliable narrator thing. And we shot the scene. We changed it to him stabbing her in the heart because I don't like guns on my sets. But we shot the scene, and then ultimately, studio, network, all the people didn't love it, didn't love this sort of like surreal fantasy thing that she would go into. And so it's gone. And it's funny because like I don't miss it when I watch the show. But like if you had asked me 2 years ago if I would ever give up on this scene, I would have been like, fuck no. Like, this is the hill I will die on. But in the process, you start to see, like there's all this beauty. And why are we introducing ugliness from beat one? What if we just get people really used to all this beauty? And then we say, haha, we lied to you.
Yeah. It is a thrilling, again, not to give anything away, but there are so many twists and turns that are, I found them to be unexpected and high stakes and so much fun. The title, what does that title mean to you, and why are people so fascinated with lying?
I don't know. I did recently I saw a list of all of the shows that have the word liar in the title, and I was like, shit, are we going to disappear in the sea of liars? I don't know. I love the title because it is the first clue, if you pay really close attention to how the show ends. But yeah, I mean, I will say a long time ago, I said to my writer's room on a different show, on Roswell, I was like, if a character doesn't have a secret, it means they don't have a story. And we had a big cast, you're trying to juggle 10 different storylines. And I was like, if we're looking at this character and they don't have a secret, it means we aren't writing their, enough for what their story is. And I think people love that. I think, right now there's a moment of really wealthy people on television and watching them destroy their lives that people are loving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could tell you why I think that's happening. But we got to play in that world of beautiful people telling really messy lies. And we got to lie to the audience. There's a lot of people right now on TikTok who are like, I just saw the poster, so I turned it on and I thought it was a cute summer romance show. And now my heart's been ripped out of my chest. And I'm like, yeah, the poster was the first lie. I'm sorry. We told you we were lying from the title. So, yeah.
Is the Summer 16 and Summer 17, is that part of the book, or is that something that you
The book
constructed?
takes place between Summer 14 and Summer 17. And so that was a big part of the timelines were a big part of our early development as far as like,
yeah, how did
do
you
we
map that?
condense this?
Literally, how did you map it? Did you have like
I mean,
four
we
different
really
boards?
just had to condense it into 2 summers.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some things that don't make sense. There's some believability stretched now. There is a new house that gets built in
That's
1
what
year.
I was going to ask you about that house.
Yeah, that house takes 2 years to build in the books. But we were like,
And location-wise, was that just like green screened? How'd you pull that off? It
No,
was just...
we were in Nova Scotia, about an hour and a half outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia, in a little fishing town called Lunenburg. And this one guy had a really big house. We did a lot of work to set house. I think we drove up his property value significantly. We had to build a dock. We had to build, patio and all those beautiful stretches of paths. Wooden paths through the seagrass. But yeah, we found a beautiful estate, and then the cottages. Obviously, we did not have a private island to work with. So the CGI is when the drone goes up over the island and you see the whole island come together. But otherwise, we were really on practical locations a lot. Obviously, when you when the new house is in the place of the old house, that was complicated. And what we did was we built a facade.
Okay.
And shot in front of the facade. There was a door that you could open and enter, so that it was practical, and then built out sort of set extension from there. We didn't need the new house a ton. I think should we have season 2 and need the new house more, we'll have to build a much bigger facade. But yeah, I mean, those are a lot of the challenges that we face doing all of those things in Nova Scotia, where there, there's a film community there. They do a lot of like Hallmark movies and Christmas movies and stuff. It had been a very long time since they had seen something of this scale, like since Titanic.
Wow.
And so we were nervous going up to Nova Scotia. There was a learning curve for the crew and stuff. But man, they learned fast. And man, are Canadians nice people. And I can't say enough good things about our crew. And we really worked them hard, and they never stopped smiling. And they were so good to each other, and they cared so much about this story.
Do you think you set that tone? Is that something you demand to have a certain that feeling? Is that something
I would. I don't think I do much demanding. I think that you always want to do your best to have a no asshole policy. And we did, do our best to vet everybody, and you try to set the tone from the top. I, as a showrunner, it's really important that you have sort of an authoritative voice, and that you seem like you know what you're doing, and like your decisions are strong. I have a co-showrunner, Julie Plec. That meant the two of us had to confer before we, I think people think that if you have a co-showrunner, it's easier. Like, no, it's more work, because instead of just telling someone, I want that one, I have to have a meeting with Julie. We have to decide we want that one. Sometimes she's in a different time zone than I am. It's a lot. But having a clear voice, I really cared about the project, and I deeply, deeply care about people. I spend a lot of time and energy making sure assistants are getting paid what they deserve, making sure nobody is, burdened with too much work, having a lot of conversations with intimacy coordinators about making sure people are comfortable as they can be.
Was this modeled for you, or is this from your own imagination of how to put something together like this? What do you
part modeled for me? Julie Plec was my first boss in television, so she had a certain way of running sets, and also I have been in this industry through a lot of changes, through the Me Too movement, through the BLM movement, and I also was an assistant and know what it feels like to be like, well, I just did somebody else's work, and they're going to get paid $25,000 for writing that outline that I wrote. And I never want people to feel like that. I love my job. I really want the people around me to love their jobs. It's easy, I think, when you're at the top to let the machine work beneath you without checking out the cogs of the machine. I don't want to be that person. And so, yeah, I think I do make a particular effort. In some ways it was modeled for me, and in some ways I know what it feels like when it is not working. Even just, in the writer's room, like I said, we filled a really diverse room, but that doesn't matter if those people don't feel like they can talk to me when something's bothering them. If I can take a picture of my writer's room and be like, look, we have so many Indian writers, but if I'm not letting them speak, or if they don't feel safe to speak, then that's just a fucking picture. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I do my best. It's really probably too important to me that after people work for me, they say nice things about me. I really want, my assistant to go on to her next job and miss me. And so, yeah, I mean, you hope to be a good boss, right? Like,
Yeah. And how did you do the credits? How did you divvy that up? Was that tricky or?
you mean the credit sequence or
No, just in terms of like.
writer's
Yeah,
credits?
mhm.
No, it wasn't tricky. So Julie Plec wrote the first episode. But we all developed it. Like we developed it together. Wrote the first one. I wrote the second one. Those two of a piece are what represents the show, because in the second episode, it's the first time we see post amnesia cadence. And then moving forward, I just wanted to honestly just make sure that everybody in the room got their name on a script, because it is such a group project. And I definitely didn't want to be in a position where somebody sat in that room for 20 weeks and didn't end up with a credit. And then toward the end, our writer's assistant, Maya Vias, who is phenomenal, she was just the best writer's assistant. I can't explain to you how much extra work she did. And so we needed to make sure that she got her name on a script. And she did a beautiful job with the draft that she wrote with Julie and I, which is very intimidating. But she really killed it. And then our finale was written by the author of the novels. And she had built it into her deal that she would write an episode. And it was our decision to make it the finale, because her book has such a beautiful ending. You know, giving her the finale also gave her a lot of time it was her first time screenwriting, you know, it gave her a lot of time to learn the rhythms of the show and the voice of the show. And she did a beautiful job. She's making a lot of people cry.
Yes. So you hinted at a second season. Is there a book after We Were Liars, or is it the prequel?
There's a prequel.
So it's
But that, you know, my hope is that if in the first season we were in present day flashing back to last year, the next season will be us in present day flashing back to 20-some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good twisty story about how those moms became those villains. And then also, you know, we still have people who are around that have stories to tell moving forward.
What does being part of a union mean to you?
Oh, man. The security of being a part of the union is incredibly important. I remember when I first got my WGA card, I mean, I like cried in a corner. I think also as a showrunner, it feels like an extra layer of protection as far as making sure that the next generation of writers is protected. This show, our first season, was written over the strike. So we had just hired all of these kids, basically. We had writers who quit their jobs in finance in New York and moved to Los Angeles to do this show and worked for 2 months and then had to put their pencils down. And watching them not get discouraged, watching them understand the enormity of what we were trying to accomplish was really inspiring. And, you know, it's also nice to have a pretty library to work in a lot of the time. I love being a part of this union, and I love the solidarity and the community of it, and the hope and the feeling that, you know, the industry is changing so fast, not for the better right now. It's, you know, there can be a lot of despair, and despairing alone would really suck, but despairing in a big group of people feels good. You know, it feels like power in numbers.
How do you prepare for a pitch? And do you even have to pitch anymore?
Yes.
And what's your technique?
It's so funny because I was just talking to somebody recently about how pitching a new show is sort of this like weirdly one of the like most gate-kept things about this industry. Like as a staff writer sitting in a room full of writers pitching story on a show, you get to watch other people do it and learn from them, but you never get to watch your boss go pitch a new show. I was really lucky in that when I first pitched Roswell, New Mexico, which was my first show, it was a sort of a reboot of an adaptation. It was 2017, just after, you know, Trump had taken office, and the original material was about high school kids, and she finds out her high school crush is an alien. And I was like, I don't want to write this show. I want to, be a revolutionary. And Julie Pleck said, well, go pitch them the version of the show that you want to do. And they won't buy it, but they'll know you. They'll understand you. And the next time they, bring you a project, they'll know who you are. So I went in and I pitched a version of the show where they're not in high school. They're almost 30. The lead character is the daughter of undocumented immigrants. The aliens are representatives of my family's Muslim. There was an Islamophobia allegory built into it. And I went in and I pitched it to the CW, who does YA shows, and they bought it at the table. And so having that pressure taken off of me and then succeeding, I don't get nervous in pitches.
How do you do it? How do you map it? Like, are you acting it out? Do you have props?
I recently started working with a graphic designer who will do like a cool. Sorry, I hit the microphone. Who will do like a cool deck. But I mean, for so long, I was just like, here's a picture of what I think this small town looks like, and here are dream cast for the actor. I wasn't doing anything fancy, but I like to talk. By the time I get into the room, I feel like I know that story really, really deeply. So I am not afraid of questions, and I map it out.
Do you think about budget?
Yes, now I do. But I also go in generally and say, I could make this show for $3.5 million an episode, or we could make it for $8 million, but we can make it for $3 million. I try to tell stories about character and heart so that I don't need you to build me a spaceship. Generally, even doing Roswell, doing an alien show, we had to crash a UFO. We threw a bunch of debris on the ground and arrived after the crash. So I know how to make a low-budget show. And that show was really about cowboys in the end. Like, it was really about, people in a small town in New Mexico. And so I think that I go into stories trying to imagine the lowest budget version of it. This is now the second show where I've told people I care about eyes and skies. I care about what's happening right up here, and I care about the huge drone shot from far away that makes this kid look like the loneliest boy in Texas. And if we can get that, then everything in the middle, we can do it for whatever budget we need to.
Is there a genre that you would love to explore, or you think you're in your pocket, this is where you're going to stay?
No, it is not where I want to stay. I really want to do true crime. I really want to do period pieces. I really want to do cowboys. I have spent the last almost 5 years working on a project that combines all three of those things with my best friend, Aisha Tyler. And that's the dream project now. I got the one that got away with We Were Liars. Now, once we're finished with We Were Liars, which will hopefully not happen too soon, that's the dream project. But really, I write from a place of, I think everything that I write explores things that make me mad. I know that's a weird thing to say. I always, I listen to this podcast. Jenny Snyder-Urman's talking about, how she is always writing about mothers and daughters. And Mara is talking about, telling this beautiful, by the way, Forever is the most beautiful YA story that's ever been on television. I thought about, what's my thing? And I'm writing I'm writing to rebel against something that pisses me off always. And there's a lot of things that piss me off. So, yeah.
You have a long career ahead of you.
And also just I can do it in any genre. I've done an alien soap. I'm now telling a very, messy psychological thriller that may veer into genre. I did vampires for a really long time and loved it. But yeah.
I have a few more questions. Going back to your music supervisor days,
yeah.
This has so much music. Can you say about how that was?
I quickly learned that I do not have what it takes to be a music supervisor. So thank God I met Chris Miller, who has been the music supervisor on all the shows I've worked on. He is magical. this show was really fun. I'm always really involved in the music in my shows. I wrote a song for Roswell. This one, we really wanted this island to feel like family summer vacation in that it had like layers of generations of music. So you have your music that you're playing, but then when you go into grandma and grandpa's house for dinner, they've got their music that they're playing. And mom and the aunts are singing a different generation of music in the kitchen while they're making their pies. And I think we accomplished that really beautifully. We had some songs that were recorded specially for the show. I got my mom's favorite song on the show, which was one I had to kind of fight for. Amazon is like, I don't know if Carole King is screaming young, hip teenagers. And I was like, she's not. It's for the grandma. But yeah, all credit to Chris Miller, our music supervisor, who is magical.
What is one piece of advice that you would like to share with a new writer?
For who?
For a new writer or for somebody who's a seasoned writer. What's your like fallback
The thing that I always tell people who are in their foot's in the door, they're on their way, two things. One is it's not a race. I actually think I was made a showrunner too early. I had done the originals for 4 years, and then I was suddenly running Roswell. And, just because you're really good alone in a room with your dog and a computer doesn't necessarily mean that you should be in charge of $1 bajillion and 300 people's emotional and physical well-being. You learn really fast, but I think the ladder is there for a reason, and not trying to jump rungs or, definitely not stepping on people on the way up is important. So that's one thing. The other thing is that take care of your assistants. Look around, make sure that people are being treated fairly. It is really easy as a showrunner to have no idea what your assistant gets paid. They don't want to tell you. And to make sure that the people at the bottom are protected, it will filter through and everybody will be happy to come to work, which will make your life easier.
Is there anything I missed?
I don't know. I'm looking at my publicist. Is there anything we missed? No. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's a real
so
honor
much.
to be here.
This is absolutely incredible, and the show is amazing. We Were Liars, streaming on Amazon. You can sit through the commercials. It's that good, and so many twists and turns.
I will say, I'm sorry about the placement of some of the commercials. We were just discussing before this that when you have the ads on streaming, we're not writing to act breaks like we are in network. So my sister was like, hey, this ad comes, I was just about to cry, and this ad just jabbed in there selling me moisturizer. And I was like, oh no.
Don't feel too much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But we do like making money. So
it's still worth it. I'm telling you.
Support the advertisements.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for watching all of it. I'm so honored.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. If you like this episode or have a comment, email us at podcast@wga.org. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. And see you next time.